Not having appropriate paternity leave is an absolute crime.
The UK has one of the worst paternity leave offers in the whole of Europe. New dads and co-parents get paid less than half of minimum wage for a maximum of 2 weeks.
We are well behind the rest of the world in this. It's well past time that we caught up and properly supported families in this country.
There's a growing movement to change this. Campaigners say better paternity leave could help a whole range of things, from men's physical health to bringing down the gender pay gap.
This will have a positive impact on women in work. It will have a positive impact on women's mental health, on the mental health of men and the mental health of children.
So I wanted to investigate the state of paternity leave in the UK, the changing role of fatherhood, and travel to a different country with better leave to find out what kind of impact it's actually had on society.
Swedish fathers take more leave than American mothers.
I can't breastfeed him, but I can do pretty much everything else.
When this little one was born, I had 6 weeks off work, and it was amazing. Tough, but amazing. It was important for family bonding and gave me and my wife time to figure out how to become mum and dad. But not everyone is so lucky.
24 hours after my daughter was born, I'm a musician and performer. I was back out on the road again working within 24 hours.
How was that for you?
I mean, it's a blur. I don't remember any of the first month after she was born.
He got 2 weeks. It was a lot, yeah. It was intense, just recovering. Everybody's tired, and for him to return back to work, yeah, it was tough.
I got 2 weeks through the company I work for, which was nice.
Was it enough?
Yeah, I found it was enough. I thought my partner might know more.
So what does the UK government actually offer at the moment? Employees can take 1 or 2 weeks off work when their child is born. This is whether they're having a baby, adopting a child, or having a baby through a surrogacy arrangement, and it's the same for same-sex couples too. The government will pay either £184 and 3p a week, or 90% of their average weekly earnings, whichever's lower. This is paid to you in the same way as your wages, and it's still taxed. Some companies do offer better deals, but lots of businesses can't afford to do this. And if you're self-employed, you've got no rights to statutory paternity leave at all.
If you have a full-time permanent role that pays well, as a part of your benefit package, you will see those types of rewards. But for everybody else who's freelance, contracting, small business, you're very much outside of that and you're struggling to make ends meet, and you're going to have to make tough decisions.
You can also take shared parental leave, but this is quite a lot more complicated. Essentially, you and your partner can share their maternity leave if both employers have opted into the scheme. This is not additional leave. Basically, the person on maternity leave has to give their partner some of their time off work. Shared parental leave is paid the same as statutory paternity leave, £184 and 3p a week, or 90% of an employee's average weekly earnings, whichever is lower.
Shared parental leave is clearly not the solution to this problem. It's been in place for 10 years now. It's not worked as a policy, and it's not the answer.
That statutory paternity leave offer is one of the worst in Europe. This chart shows how much fathers get paid on parental leave in OECD countries. New dads in the UK do get that 2 weeks off, but the pay is so low that it actually works out as 0.4 weeks of full pay. That's based on the country's average wage. We have a higher pay than the US, Israel and New Zealand, but everyone else on this list is better off. And this has all caused serious financial problems for new families. Polling from the TUC found that half of families struggle financially when dads take off time for paternity leave.
I got a week and 1 day into that 2 weeks, and I just decided to go back to work. For me, the cost and the stress of the cost of not making money in that time was too great, and I just decided to go back to work, which I now regret.
A study from Pregnant and Screwed found that only 3 in 5 dads actually take their 2 weeks off.
If you've ever tried to buy a pram or all the other kind of baby stuff that comes with having a new kid, your costs are going up while your income is going down.
But this isn't just about policy. It's also about the changing role of fatherhood in this country.
Hello? Yes?
In decades gone by, dads wouldn't get time off because why would they need it? Women look after the kids after all.
Well, that took care of supper. Now the ironing and then the packing.
But that idea has changed significantly. In fact, polling from the Dad Shift found that 90% of fathers want to be a bigger part of their kids' lives.
You would find in most heterosexual couples that both want to see dads being able to spend more time with their children, and yet our antiquated parental leave system prevents them from doing this. And, you know, it's really devastating for many couples.
So it's clear the UK offer isn't great. And campaigners say the benefits of a good paternity leave could be huge.
This is not a woke position. The first few years of being a dad are absolutely crucial, and affinity and closeness and a bond with your family will keep you in that family for much longer than any other policy.
For kids, if they have a close relationship with their father, they do better in school, their cognitive development is better, their emotional development is better. For dads, your health is better, you're happier, you're more likely to live longer if you've got a strong bond with your child. And for mums, it means that they're properly supported in the first few weeks after birth, but also it has a massive impact on improving gender equality.
We believe paternity leave is the key to closing the gender pay gap. We did some research with the Centre for Progressive Policy, which looked at other countries that have at least 6 weeks paternity leave paid at a decent percentage of salary. And we found that in countries that do that, they have on average a 4% less gender pay gap. What tends to happen when men are unable to take time out to care for their children is it starts to reduce the unpaid labour gap, so the cooking, the cleaning, the caring. That means that women are freed up to spend more time thinking and working on their careers, and therefore you see a lower gender pay gap.
These are big claims, so I'm travelling to a country with better paternity leave to find out what kind of impact it's actually had.
Thank you.
Parents here in Sweden get 480 days leave, and they can split it pretty much however they want, but there's 90 days reserved exclusively for each parent, which you can't transfer. Of that, about 60 days can be taken at the same time. For the first 390 days, the amount you get paid is based on your income, usually about 80% of your salary. But it's capped, so it could be a bit less if you've got a high wage. The last 90 days are paid much less, basically about £13 a day. Dads taking time off is so normal here, they even have a phrase for it, latte puppers. Basically people that can be seen with their prams and their coffees walking around towns and cities. Although speaking to dads here, it's not necessarily a term of endearment.
I prefer my coffee black for starters, but...
Otto took 9 months off work to look after his first child, and with another on the way, he says he's going to take that again.
And my wife took 9 months as well. She took the first 9 and then I took the second half.
First day of your leave, your wife goes back to work. How do you feel?
Well, that was stressful first hours, but then after a few hours I started to relax and kind of be on top of things. It's difficult sometimes. It's very different from working your day job, but it's also a great opportunity and very rewarding.
I think we've come quite a good way to give the freedom and the possibility to fathers to stay at home with their kids. And I think people are loving it. You know, if you go out in the city in Stockholm, you can see a lot of fathers pushing their strollers, maybe sipping a bit of coffee and spending time together with their kids and tying closer bonds together at an early age. And I think it's very important.
So Otto recommended to me to come to this place just down the road from where he lives. It's kind of an open preschool and it's full of dads normally. So I've popped in and they kindly let me come in and film.
I mean, it's a lot more work than an actual job, actually, because it never really stops, you know.
Being a parent, it doesn't matter if you're a man or a woman, mum or a dad. It's pretty much the same. I mean, I can't breastfeed him, but I can do pretty much everything else. And I'm not just going to be a stranger who works for 10 hours a day and shows up for dinner.
I couldn't even imagine just having 2 weeks, since this is how I was raised by my parents as well.
In Sweden, we pay lots of taxes and all that, and that some of that tax goes to weeks, and that's great.
Is it worth paying that higher tax for schemes like this?
Oh, definitely.
Across Sweden, dads account for about 30% of all parental leave. That is, obviously, not completely equal. So, does Sweden have a gender-equal society? It's actually quite tricky to compare the gender pay gap across countries, but by most calculations, Sweden's is pretty low, and usually much lower than the UK. But researchers say that just because you're the most gender-equal country, that doesn't mean things are completely equal, it's just slightly better than anywhere else.
The gender-neutral parental leave was introduced in 1974, and it's still not equal. So you can imagine how much time it takes. These policies have to break down extremely hard-broken norms around gender and what it means to be a woman, what it means to be a man, and that takes time.
That's quite depressing because...
Yes, there's no quick fix. I wouldn't say there's any quick fix.
One of the things I thought when I was coming to Stockholm was that I was coming to some sort of parenting utopia where everything was great and you guys have completely solved it. Doesn't sound like that's necessarily the case.
No, it's not. But we have come quite far. But we need to do more, actually. Achieving gender equality, it's so important, and this is one of the keys to achieving that.
Back here in the UK, the issue of cost is probably the biggest argument against bringing in a more generous paternity leave. Analysis from the Fatherhood Institute puts the cost at around £2.27 billion a year. That's based on every single new father taking 6 weeks leave paid at 90% of their salary. That is, obviously, a lot of extra money to find, especially for a government tight on cash. The Labour government has pledged to change things, slightly. They plan to make paternity leave a day one right for workers. Beforehand, they had to work for their employers for 26 consecutive weeks. We asked the Department for Business and Trade for comments on this, but no one was available. They did send this statement though. We are committed to delivering change so that people are more able to balance working life with family and personal commitments, whether that's raising children, improving their own well-being, or looking after a loved one with a long-term health condition. That's why we're making paternity leave and unpaid parental leave day one rights as part of our Employment Rights Bill, and we will also carry out a review of wider statutory parental leave to ensure it offers the best possible support to working families around the country and boost economic growth. But money is only one issue. Until recently, paternity leave hasn't been seen as a big issue, especially in comparison to other problems families face: childcare, maternity care, and the cost of living crisis.
I don't know what I would have done without you yesterday.
And there's still a stigma around all of this. People who think mum should look after the kids and dad should go back to work.
We heard from one father who took shared parental leave, and his boss would email him and start the email with "Hello, nanny." And we heard from another man who requested to take his allocated and legal right to paternity leave. And his boss said, "Shouldn't your wife be doing that? And shall I buy you a dress while you're at it?"
And paternity leave is, of course, only one side of the story. Maternity leave is longer, more complicated, much more expensive, and some say far from perfect.
We have a really long maternity leave, actually, in comparison to other countries. You can take up to 12 months off. But in terms of pay, it's incredibly meagre.
You need to have both, and countries where they're doing this really well, like in Sweden, you see a good amount of ring-fence leave properly paid for both parents, and then a shared allowance that they can choose to divide up between them, however works best for them. But it can't be an either or. It's not paternity pay or maternity pay, it has to be both.
Better paternity leave in some ways seems like a bit of a no-brainer. It helps with family bonding and could make society more equal between the genders. We've seen that in places like Sweden, even if progress there hasn't been quite as quick as people would like. But it would be expensive and require a major shift in thinking. Attitudes are changing, but campaigners say it could be a while for actual policy to catch up.
We've heard from thousands of parents now who've got in touch to share their stories, both mums and dads, from same-sex relationships, from heterosexual relationships, all kind of different backgrounds. And across the board, no one feels like this is working.
All of our systems were set up around this one person in a family that goes out and earns a living and comes back and their dinner is ready for them on the table and there's a cold beer in the fridge. We've seen that really radically change.
This is not left or right. This is one of the few things and few conversations where there isn't really a binary opposite. There's no movement to counter what we're saying. And I think that's a really important indicator just how important this is.